You ever watched a friend go completely off the rails? When I met Olivia, she was 24, already divorced, and had a small son. She married too early, got pregnant, and her husband was too young to handle it. Her son's father adored her boy, spoiling him rotten whenever he was allowed to visit. But he wasn't really interested in the nuts and bolts of parenting. We developed a friendship, taking lunch together most days. Her son was her world. Being a single mom was hard, but her son was her world. She said all the right things. She would die for him. Every sacrifice was worth it, his needs always come first before her own. Then she met a guy. She was in love. And he loved her son too. It was less than a year before he proposed. She wasn't ready, but she loved him, and he was proposing every week. She finally gave in, and after a year of dating, she remarried, and he moved in with her and her 3-year-old son. It was a little rocky, but they were in love. He would steal her cookie jar money to buy pizza instead of cooking. He bounced from job to job while attending nursing school. He smoked more than they could really afford. But it all seemed like the typical problems of a young family trying to make ends meet and better themselves. And he was so good with her son. Her son started school, and there were problems. She did everything she could to help him succeed. He was diagnosed with a learning disability and was prescribed medication. Her new husband spent at least an hour every day in her son's room, helping the boy with his homework. There was bullying at school. The two of them tried to work with the staff. The bus was a problem, so she drove him to school. Her husband picked him up in the afternoon. Then stuff started disappearing. Little stuff, no big deal. Olivia wrote it off as being careless or forgetful. Her son was hiding food and dirty dishes in his room. She worried. Then medicine started disappearing. Her son's medication. Her prescriptions too. Her son denied taking them, but isn't that what any problematic 7-year-old would say? An entire bottle of medicine disappeared from Grandma's house. Grandma finally confronted Olivia, advising it wasn't the first time. This was the first time a brand new full bottle disappeared, but pills had gone missing before, and only when the family was visiting at Grandma's. Accusations, defenses, screaming. Storming out, the three of them returned to the apartment, vowing to never speak to Grandma again until she apologized. Her husband quit his job at the hospital out of the blue. No explanation, other than "I don't want to be a nurse anymore." Years of tuition money and classes down the drain. Olivia was furious. Still angry over Grandma's accusations, they spent Thanksgiving with Olivia's husband's parents instead of Olivia's. It was here that his brother told Olivia how much he admired her for standing by her man in spite of his addiction problems. As well as all the terminations for stealing substances from medical facilities. Her brother-in-law observed that every other woman had run in the other direction when they found out about his sealed juvenile record. One look at her face, and her brother-in-law knew he'd messed up. "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I thought you knew." Her husband had quit his job at the hospital to avoid criminal prosecution for stealing substances, agreeing to abandon nursing to avoid jail. The missing stuff out of the apartment had been sold to pay for substances. He'd stolen Grandma's substances, his wife's substances, and the child's substances. Apparently, he was equal opportunity and would take any prescription substance he could get his hands on. And he had been convicted at age 16 for touching little kids. Small children, boys, and girls. Multiple incidents. Small children, like her son. Her son, when questioned, confirmed that homework wasn't the only thing her husband had helped with every night. The abuse had been going on since before he could remember. He was 3 when they married. It had happened almost daily since the wedding. She kicked him out that night. And called me. It was a really rough couple of months. A divorce would have to wait until she could afford the lawyer, but it was over immediately. I urged her to call the police. The man was a serial kid toucher. Other children were at risk if she didn't prosecute. The court would grant a divorce as part of the proceedings. She refused. I urged her to call a therapist. She had our employer provided health insurance that would provide mental health support. She'd been blindsided and traumatized, and she needed counseling to work through her unresolved and undeserved guilt. She refused. I urged her to call a therapist for her son.